Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Assalamu-alaikum, Jiayanu, Pakhair-agale, Nihao, Churushumme, Washmale, Ohayab Gozaimas, Hola, Bonjour, Privyet, Kaifahal, Halishubachatore, Ahlan Wasalan, Marhaba, Buna, Mucho, Gracias, Swabi, Balli Kareaya, Hosh Galden, and I, Hosayo, and thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into PTV World. You're certainly watching World this morning, alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Sati. Assalamu-alaikum. And I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well, that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. But first things first, before I actually today move on to Hajra, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we really need to connect as a nation and come out for all of those people who have been affected by the flood. But I believe now I certainly want my wonderful colleague to actually pinpoint the areas where we can help and then highlight whether how can we come together. Hello Hajra, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for introducing me. So Shahzad, we all know that we are afflicted by the flooding. The rains are very much angrier, very much more vicious than they were in the past. Of course, Pakistan is no stranger to monsoon season, and also we have seen flooding in the past, but this time it was really bad. And I think the way the communication lines are collapsing and had been collapsed in the past, I think it's the really concerning thing. And again, when we talk about the security, so security is not just in the traditional sense in, amassing your weapons or, amplifying your armed forces. It is also, securing yourself against the climate change, against the food insecurity and whatnot, right? And I'm really, so inspired by, how people are coming up to help other people out. There are a lot of, relief camps, flood relief camps, that I could see they're placed in a lot of places in markets, in the streets and in different areas, and how people are going there and contributing their part, to sort of, provide help to their brother or sisters. They're in dire need.
Exactly. That's wonderful, and thank you very much for saying that. But I'm really going to highlight a few areas where people really need to be very considerate about our brethren, and it's because of the fact that imagine that in times of such difficulty, in times of floods, ladies and gentlemen, obviously there's going to be food insecurity. There's going to be a lot of diseases out there too as well, and we really need to be prepared for that. Obviously it's an emergency situation. The emergency has been imposed too as well in certain different areas of Pakistan, where we really need to make sure that we reach out to all of those people. But there are a few more things which we really need to consider being a Muslim Pakistani, and that is that we really need to be ethical in our practices. Now imagine that this is something I'm quoting from a vendor, and I'm very sorry, I felt bad for that person and gentleman too as well, because Haji Sahab ne, I want to say it in Urdu, तो एक हाजी साहब ने 3000 का टेंट 25,000 रुपए में बेचकर कहा कि यार सैलाब ज़दगान की मदद करनी चाहिए. I think that's the very point which I wanted to highlight today, and make sure that you have a little bit of sense too as well. Imagine that even in COVID times we have seen that how a test which costed 3,500 rupees was actually taken out to 9,000 or 10,000 rupees too as well. Why do we take advantage of such an opportunity where people are crying, where people are dying, where we really need to come together as a nation, and we certainly do not, we lack that morals, we lack those ethics in our community, in our society too as well. Please, I beg all of you people who are actually out there, who are doing all of these activities, please don't do that. Those single injections in times of COVID, the single injection must have costed 40,000, 50,000 rupees, which was a life-saving injection. We sold it for 400,000, 500,000. Please don't do it with people. Please, you have to go back, in the life hereafter as well, and you really will be answerable to Allah Almighty. So please make sure that you stand with your values, the values which have been imparted to you by your grandparents, with the values which have been imparted to you by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We really need to stand by that. But first things first, I think what we really need to do is that look into the news, what's happening. We'll give you a detailed news about the flood and the people affected by the flood too as well, and then we will move on with our experts over here. Because this conversation is going to be very interesting. Hajar, number one, the fact is that a lot of people have been talking about climate change. We've been talking about climate change. We've been talking about that how, this year around the rainfall was actually double than the previous year too as well. We've been talking about cloudburst. But there's something very interesting which we'll be talking about. It might not even be about climate change. So, one will obviously think that, okay, what is it about? But first things first, I think let's get started with the news, what the initiatives taken by the government, our Prime Minister too as well. So, Haja, why don't you take the lead?
Right. So, our Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, has called an emergency meeting of the government's allies in Islamabad to deliberate upon the current situation in the country. In a statement, Minister for Information and Broadcasting Mariam Aurangzeb said that chief ministers of all provinces have been invited to the meeting, which would also be attended by the armed forces leadership. She said important decisions are expected to be taken at the meeting. And I really want to make this a narrative, because I really want people know that if they want to help people who are affected in the floods. So Pakistan Army has also established flood relief helpline for the public facilitation to coordinate rescue and relief efforts across the disaster hit areas of the country. The ISPR said Army helpline desks in various formations can be reached on the universal access number 1135. It also mentioned that a separate helpline has also been set up for KPK Army Flood Relief Help Desk that could be reached on UAN 1125. And all those people, who really want to help out there, I think, there are a lot of people who are coming out, who are taking part in these relief and rehabilitation activities to facilitate their brothers and sisters in the dire need. Please go out there, donate, because I think, your brothers and sisters are calling you.
Exactly. And other than, all of these helplines which are out there, so God forbid if there's somebody who's in an emergency, please make sure that you call all of these helplines too as well, so that the rescue teams can reach you. Not just that. Now, we as Pakistanis have a bigger role, and that role, ladies and gentlemen, is that the world recognizes us as the most philanthropic nation. Now, imagine that if we are not going to be philanthropic towards our own brethren, I don't think and I don't believe that there's any need of being philanthropic after all of that loss and chaos Pakistan is going through. So please make sure that you donate. Imagine that if all of us Pakistanis, we text every single day, and it might cost us probably thousands of rupees too as well, just to be in connection with people. So today, to make sure that that we're going to save lives of people, all we have to do is that we have to actually send a text to 9999, and 10 rupees will be deducted out of your balance too as well. Not just that, I think there is a Prime Minister Flood Relief Fund too as well. G12164 is the account number. Please make sure that you donate a sum of amount which can actually change people's life too as well. Once again, the helplines are right in front of you, 1135. And yes, there is a dedicated line for KPK as well, which is 11252 as well. Now, let's take a look at how the conditions are when we talk about floods over here in Pakistan. So first up, the torrential monsoon rains across the country wreak lives and property losses, as the total death count in various incidents crossed 1,033 and 1,500 individuals got injured since the start of monsoon season. The heavy rains lashing out in 110 districts of the country have incurred multiple life, property and infrastructure losses during the monsoon period. The flood has affected over 350 million people, caused loss of over 800,000 livestock and damaged over 1 million houses across the country. The heavy rains and floods in the country have washed away the standing crops in various parts of the country. The floods has also washed away 150 bridges and damaged different roads and highways with 3,500 kilometer length across the country. Many small and medium dams have been swept away, and many link roads have been destroyed in the country due to heavy rains in the season. The train service has also been affected due to flood water in the country. And in addition to that, I would certainly want to talk about the flood relief activities which are taking place. And when we speak about the flood relief activities, obviously, once again, we have spoken about the helplines which are in place as well, 1135 or 11255, which is a dedicated helpline for KPK as well. We have told you that you can donate by 9999, text on that as well. And then there's Prime Minister Flood Relief Fund, which is the account number is G12164. So please make sure that you donate generously. Now, PTA has actually introduced a helpline for flood victims too as well. So the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority on Friday introduced a text to donate short code, which I have mentioned, 9999, to enable the consumers to donate their funds through mobile phone text to support the flood victims. The consumers would be required to write fund and send to 9999 short code to donate ₹10 to contribute to the relief and rehabilitation activities in the flood ravaged areas across the country. The PTA has already issued a notification in this regard to aware the masses about the easy donation method. The authority has asked all the cellular network operators to update the National Disaster Management Authority regarding the received donations. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif had appealed to the countrymen, including the expatriates, as well as the charity organizations, to come up to aid the distressed people. He also established a Prime Minister Flood Relief Fund 2022, where the people can contribute funds to account number G12164, as I have mentioned before.
Right, I'm really glad that the people out there, and especially on Friday, we had a guest, from the Islamic Relief. It's a charity organization operating within the UK, and was here, to assist our Prime Minister, our government, to facilitate the flood affected, activities there, and the rehabilitation. So, the one phase is, Shahzad, that people actually, want the basic amenities. For example, the water is not really good. They need food because, and they're, shelterless. The second phase is, how to rehabilitate them in terms of, giving them the proper shelters which they deserve. It's a basic human right. I think first phase is a bit easier, and the second phase is, I think, very difficult, considering the fact that it requires a lot of investment, right? And we have seen that, how in 2010 floods, Pakistan, I think, required $10 billion to, rehabilitate all those people who were affected by the flooding, right? It's quite an amount of the money, but, we do have people in the studio who are going to give us a very different view about, what caused these flooding, and what are the actual root causes of these, and we need to shed more light on them and, bring out a very diverse perspective when it comes to that. So we're very lucky that we have been joined by Sayyid Mahmood Nasir. He's former IG Forest. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Ji, welcome.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. And alongside him, ladies and gentlemen, once again, obviously, when we talk about rehabilitation, we really need smart solutions. We do not need expensive solutions. And it's because of the fact that, for a country with meager resources, we really have to fulfill, we really need to make sure that help which we are initiating actually reaches out to each and every individual who's in distress, in the times of distress too as well. So to talk about how we can come up with smarter solutions, while we construct back, while we rehabilitate as well, and on which areas we really need to construct, I think we have a very apt guest over here who happens to be an architect as well. He is Mr. Usman Mahmood. Hello Usman, assalamu alaikum, good morning, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, wa alaikum assalam, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, so moving on to our IG Saab. So, sir, I really wanted to ask you that there is this narrative out there that, the floodings are caused by the climate change. We have seen that, in South Asia, there are lots of floods. In America, there were lots of floods. And now Europe is experiencing the worst drought in the 500 years, right? And they are seeking towards the, coal-based initiatives in order to, satisfy their energy and fuel needs. But then there is another narrative, which says that actually such kind of changes are caused after every, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 years. And this cycle repeats. And I believe that you do have some insight into such kind of narrative, especially in terms of El Nino. So what is that, and do you want to shed light on that?
Yes, thank you for having me. First of all,
Former ex-IG.
Okay.
I got it.
First thing is that highly effective people, that remember that book? Highly effective people spend more time on important things, not urgent things. Today we are here. You have started a topic of important things, but today we need urgent things. And why is that? Because we never spent quality time to address important things. And as you have pointed out about some other factors other than climate change, that is a big thing. So I'll be talking about two issues, some facts and fictions about forestry, their role in flood control, because lately I entered into anthropology, and from their theoretical perspective I'll look back to my old profession, forestry.
And sir, in addition to that, please make sure that you shed light on how that billion tree tsunami has actually caused massive flooding, or probably added or contributed to this year's massive flooding too as well.
That is a very sensitive and dangerous issue, because I have always to be with my fraternity, my foresters, my batchmates, my juniors, seniors. How can I speak against them or speak?
But we really need to speak about where those trees should have been planted.
Okay, because you are not going to own me, but they own me. So
we own you. That's why we have you.
That's on the lighter side.
Yes.
So this is one thing, and the other thing, of course, every Tom, Dick, and Harry these days is after climate change. And I have been always telling them, do you have the basic knowledge in basic pure sciences to, decipher
To back it up.
yes,
Yes.
what is going on in climate change
Right.
and what really is happening.
Right.
Everybody is quoting IPCC reports.
Right.
What are IPCC reports? They don't generate knowledge. They analyze other people's knowledge and they certify only that is a consensus science by 197 countries. Even if one country says no, change this to that, they have to change it.
Right.
So this more science, political science than science.
Okay.
So at the national level, when we have devastation of this scale, we
Right.
must be having our own expertise to see our own situation and devise policies accordingly. This is one thing. Now you pointed out about other factors which are happening. There is one factor called El Nino, the other is La Nina.
Right.
That is going on, and it has so much correlation with what is extreme weather events, which has nothing to do with climate change, by the way.
Okay.
Right.
It's been happening for over thousands and thousands of years when there were no fossil emissions.
Right.
Still extinction was going on. So there's one paradigm that it's climate change, but there is another that there was no carbon emissions. But things both you cannot say wrong. And one issue that is knowledge is never static. Knowledge
true.
keeps on evolving.
That's True.
And our problem is we learn something in the textbooks and in forestry it's happening and we don't accept change. Change, everyday change happens.
True.
Right.
Maybe one day somebody will say, oh, that once upon a time that wrong science of Einstein was wrong.
So, but then Nasir Mahmood Saab, if you are saying that this has been going on for over thousands of years and extinction has been going on, so does that shift the responsibility from us humans towards this the change in the weather pattern?
I'm not going
Right.
to talk about I'll give you absolute solutions or
Right.
I'm just opening up the other factors.
Exactly. So that we look into it too as well. And sir, in addition to that, because you have spoken about the fossil fuels and the decipher was that in the last 1,000 years, probably if we go back in time, there was no carbon emissions too as well. So imagine, do you think that there were soaring temperatures? Do you think that there were temperatures which people never experienced before too as well? Because that's another factor which we really need to include into this conversation.
Yes, just have a look at his civilizational history, look at the Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Indus Valley civilization. It's been going on. Some climatic, we can only make theories.
Okay.
Some climatic events took place which resulted in the loss of entire civilizations.
True.
It's not just here, it was something happened in Egypt, something happened in the Americas, Inca and Maya civilizations, something happened. We keep on seeing, archaeological remains in Europe, in Ice Age, things are happening.
Right.
And I'm not saying that it's not due to climate change. Climate change amplifies those
Adversities.
adversities.
Exactly.
Even if there was no climate change, things will keep on happening.
Okay.
Exactly.
And what we need to do is to plan our, metaphysical approach towards life or
Lovely.
towards civilization
Lovely.
accordingly.
Exactly.
Otherwise, in recent history, if you see major El Nino or La Nina effects and see what happens in Europe, the French Revolution
Right.
was followed by an extreme event. 1970, what a country was East Pakistan. In 71, after the major historic floods, it was Bangladesh.
Ji.
Things keep on happening.
Right.
And same thing is happening now.
Right.
And we need to know, the dilemma is, today we should be talking about relief when we are talking about long term. But this is the time to sensitize the decision makers, otherwise they won't listen.
Exactly. And sir, in addition to that, I would certainly say, and I've always been an advocate of proactive strategy too as well, where how all of a sudden, when the flood comes in, you all know, and we've been talking about it over and again about it as well. The PDMA, the NDMA actually launched an advisory, released an advisory,
Right.
and the people at times do not even listen to them too as well. They're like, nahi ji, koi nahi aa raha salah, even though that it happens every year as well.
That's true,
Now, I
that's
really want to go back to our architect Saab over here,
Right.
Usman, and what I really need to ask is that, we're looking at 150 bridges, so there's no connection of the roads too as well. People, wherever they are stranded. Not just that, we saw footages, very disturbing footages from Swat too as well, where the entire hotel goes down. Now imagine that the same hotel went down in 2010, the person constructed the same hotel at the same place. Let's not go back over there because it's going to be really very painful too as well. How do you think moving ahead we really need to come up with structures which can be more prone to such conditions too as well, so that that all of that distress we are in, just because that there's no communication, no infrastructure in between different places and people are stranded, so even the relief activity cannot take place in all of those areas. It's difficult and we have meager resources. We cannot use helicopters as much as the other nations can. So how do you think that moving forward we come up with such reliable constructions that, unfortunately, first of all, that all of those constructions are not lost and that they're more prone to such conditions?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So that's a very good question. That's the basic challenge that we face on a regular basis, right? So this current situation, it is a cause and effect, right? So there are multiple factors that we have to understand. So first off, sustainable construction, right? Which is avoidance of depletion of any natural resources, right? So for example, rainwater harvesting, so on and so forth, energy efficient buildings, so on and so forth, right? And then there's a factor of encroachments, right? There's a factor of encroachments, and not only that, but subpar structures which are built to just be there, right? And that's a great challenge because of the fact that they're not flood resistant, they're not earthquake resistant. So we really need to make sure that we build structures which are not only any natural calamity that occurs, they're resistant or resilient to that, because we cannot definitely prevent that calamity, right?
And how do we do that is something which I want to ask you. And before I say that, I think it is really very important. It should be an eye-opener for the local governments anywhere else, wherever there are people from the government who have actually allowed people to construct on places where it was, a place for a riverbed. Because, our entire civilization has been just around the Indus River too as well. So imagine that for all of those people, for I don't know what reason, but you have allowed people to go out there and construct wherever they want. This shouldn't have been happening ever since, but now I think it should be an eye-opener. And for people out there, who in 2010 have lost their entire property and the structures they have built, and now once again in 2022 we're looking at the same condition. So please, it's a humble request to the provincial governments and the people, so that you look into this matter, that how people were allowed to construct, may it be hotels or houses or homes, at a position where that it is for the water to flow to as well. So please go ahead. How do we do that?
So first off, you have to understand that you have to apply materials which are, right now they need rehabilitation, right? And they need it quickly, right? So we need materials. We cannot rely on the same materials that we have been relying on, right? So we can rely on materials which are applicable instantly. So such as prefabricated materials, steel, wood, and so on and so forth. Now we do have wood which is thermally treated, right? We have several companies on board with us, international companies, who are willing to contribute, right? Who provide this material. The wood is thermally treated. The moisture content is driven out, right? And so it has a life of 20 to 25 years outdoors, right? And that's a huge benefit of that material. Plus there's steel and prefabricated.
Which one's cheaper? Because when we talk about rehabilitation and we talk about a country with meager resources, so I think same applies for the people of that country too as well. Because we certainly, if they had resources, they would have been living at a place which might not have been flood prone too as well. So which one do you think, which ways are the cheaper ways to go or move towards rehabilitation?
Certainly. So as I talked about sustainability as well, sustainability talks about cost effectiveness as well, right? So that's a huge factor. because we definitely don't want them to build houses or structures which they cannot pay for, right? Or they cost a lot.
True.
So materials which are on a more affordable end would definitely be wood and steel, right? Now, steel in the basic sense, so we can use prefabricated materials as well, precast concrete slabs. They are a viable material. Bamboo is another material that can be used and has been used for several years. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I want to add over here because, we do know that next year, once again, we unfortunately will be sitting over here and talking about the floods again. So I think, where we're talking about the precast concrete too as well, that will be difficult because we really need to keep in mind that, that the floods are coming. So I don't think that concrete's idea would be great because unfortunately we might even lose more people because of this idea too as well, and we really need to keep that in mind. So for that, I think wood will do as well. And this other material you were talking about, which one was that?
Wood, steel.
Steel. I think steel would still be fine enough too as well. But sir, I need to come back to you now. I'm very sorry, Haja, I know that you actually had a question. But I think I want you to shed more light on this very theory which you brought to us too as well, which is about El Nino and La Nina as well. So please go ahead, let us know, why you're not convinced that it's climate change and it's two of these factors.
And more so, I really wanted to ask you that, so if you believe that El Nino, I do know that there are studies, which, verify that, this is an event and this has been, occurring on. So for example, extinction of dinosaurs and etc., right? But again, I do believe that there is a problem with this narrative is that, it ultimately shifts focus away from the climate change, from the humans taking responsibility to directly nature. And this is one of the, I think, narrative that is used by the multinational corporations or the big giants that are using, or they are using the global emissions, to churn out the economic activity when it comes to that. And they have been saying that, no, it's not been caused by the human activity, rather it's a nature-based system. But we do have floods here, right? So how can we make our cities more resilient, climate resilient cities? What is the solution?
You are mixing two things. The first thing you have said is very important, but we have to divide it into two parts.
Sure.
One is pure science,
right,
and then add political and governance issues.
Right.
Then talk about multinational.
Right.
The pure science exists. It is hard fact.
Right.
It was predictable. It was predicted by the only North American institutions which were predicting last year about what's going on with El Nino converting to La Nina. That is hard fact. You agree with it or not?
Right.
How you use it, that is something else.
Right.
And I am not saying that it's not due to climate change. Climate change amplifies it, multiplies the impacts of El Nino and La Nina. And if there was no climate change, still these things are very important.
Right.
This is one issue. The second thing, talking about resilient cities, let's talk about resilient civilizations. There is no civilization that is resilient to at all times. Things keep on changing. Look at Pakistan. We are a country located between the high mighty Himalayas and the Arabian Sea at the south.
True.
And since millions of years, rivers have been bringing out not only water but also silt, and we are a floodplain country. Huge floodplains, hundreds of miles of floodplains would bring not only water but also nutrient-rich soils. And the bumper crops which now would come, and especially in the Rotkoi area, Koi Suleiman. I've been working there, I've been visiting there frequently. Without any fertilizer, without any irrigation, bumper crops come up if this managed properly, and unfortunately very little investment has been done on Rotkoi system of irrigation. Now this year it was too much water. You have said 5 times, 4 times, and still we have not completed the monsoon cycle. It's 1 month to go. So these things happen. And as a civilization, we should respect the river and the river basin, and live a design accordingly. When we constructed dams, we brought in water to one part of the country, but the southern part lost equally good amount of land. Now coming back to forestry, these there are common concept that because of deforestation in the high mountains, there is a lot of floods downstream.
Right.
And I think you believe in it.
Okay.
We do.
I don't. I don't fully.
Why? Why don't you?
Why I don't fully? Because anything I feel or I believe has to be supported by empirical science
Okay.
and empirical data, proven data. Watershed management as a new discipline emerged only 100 years old.
Okay.
And it's based on the sponge theory.
Okay.
Maybe the first paper was by Pinchot, the father of American forestry.
Okay.
And it's called the sponge theory, that trees and with their roots make sponge. They absorb the water, they retain it, and then slowly release it down, and we have a happy life. But when there is a cloud burst and the sponge is saturated, the weight and volume of the trees
Right.
go like 10 pins. We've seen heavy boulders and stones coming down.
Right.
There was so when there's of this scale, when there is rainfall, trees don't work.
Okay.
And we have been this theory has sold very well. It found way into our curriculum. It found way into the media persons. There are many who you recycle published information with different words. It's happening, and it's bought by the political leaders like the 10 billion tsunami.
And in addition to that, sir, what I would certainly want to say over here is that, okay, because partially now it feels like as if we really need to agree with you, because it really makes sense and it is kind of backed by your empirical sciences too as well. But what I really need to tell you over here is that, for the past all of these years, we have never experienced so many rains. So when we talk about torrential rains or monsoon rains, the downpour was double the time, it was previous year, just around this time too as well. That's what research says and that's what science says too as well. So I want to talk about this, that, okay, with milder rains, do you think that whether the forestry or the tree plantation can help or not? But to take that forward, we really need to head out towards a short break. Once you guys are going to come back, I think we will continue from here. How do we formulate this idea that, okay, if we are to stop floods over here in Pakistan, where we have been always prone to floods, what should we do? I think that's the next concept as well, and that's what we really want to move in the direction. And we really need to talk about, how all of that rehabilitation is going to take place. People are going to construct their houses once again, unfortunately, on the same places, and this is something which I certainly do not want for our Pakistanis, but for people who have spent every penny of their earnings, for the lifetime. I think that, they're only left with those places where they already had a house, or they had a home, or they had a hotel, or whatever place they built for themselves. This is something we will talk about after a short break. We'll be right back.
You are watching PTV World.
Welcome back, and we were talking about the flood rehabilitation, what is causing it, what are the narratives and how to counter that. But before we delve into the solution parts of it, I think our team made a wonderful package, explaining about the flooding situation and the rehabilitation. So let's look at the package.
A number of flood relief camps have been established throughout the city of Lahore for the rehabilitation of flood affectees. Lahore City Administration, Pakistan Army and various NGOs have set up relief flood camps throughout the provincial capital. Banners and signs have been also set up to point citizens at various camps and highlight the urgent need to provide food and other supplies to the millions affected by the floods. PMLN Saiful Malook Khokhar has announced 10 million rupees financial aid to the flood affectees. In Lahore's Singhpura area, PMLN Women's Wing have also set up a camp. PMLN's MNA Shaista Pervez visited the camp and while speaking to the media urged citizens to donate as much as possible to help the flood affectees.
And that's the beauty of being a Pakistani, where how the nation comes together, gels and make sure that whatever they can, whatever sort of help they can extend towards people who are in distress, we will certainly do that every single day, every single moment of our life. And we will continue to do so. And once again, I'm going to urge and pledge to all of those people who are out there, please make sure that you donate generously as well. But there's one point which I certainly want to make sure that you listen to it carefully, and that is that whenever you're donating, whenever you're making sure that you're going to give a part of your funds or probably any edibles or tents or which can actually give comfort and convenience to the people who are in distress, make sure that you do it through a system which you trust, through your friends, through different organizations who are working on the ground. That your money is going to go to the right people too as well. And this is your responsibility. Just sitting at home saying, okay, I've donated this amount of money is not going to make it. You really need to make sure that through the system you're donating, you have trust in it, and that it is going to go to the deserving as well.
Okay, so now moving on to the solution parts, and I do believe, Usman, I would like to come to you, that vulnerability and poverty are very closely linked. So people, who were most affected in 2010 floods were mostly, poor people who were the, working on the agricultural lands, and they were mostly the tenants, and, how they were made more poor by these flooding. So, so what are the solutions that do you think, we need to implement in order to become more, climate resilient when it comes to the flooding?
So first off, we have to take into account the professionals who do this for a living. So such as myself, architects and town planners have to be engaged when you're building a society or any sort of constructions on lands which are prone to flooding, because once we have a plan, we can act on it, so it's a lot of what we see is that a problem comes and then we say, oh, ye ho gaya. Right. So that's not the way to go, because so once we've learned from it, now what we can do is we can act accordingly. We can plan out the residences. We can build structures which are resilient to the natural forces, earthquakes or floods, or heavy rain. So I've talked about rainwater harvesting as well. So for example, for thousands and millions of people who are already living there, who live there on a regular basis, if they imagine if they all did rainwater harvesting, we wouldn't, it's a portion of the solution, but it is still a solution, drip irrigation system, building away from the main water, so no more encroachments, so on and so forth, and building structures which are resilient to floods and earthquakes. So I believe that is the main key to be able to move forward and build a better Pakistan.
Lovely. Exactly. So moving on to Nasir Saab, sir. So I do say that we are a country of paradoxes, because sometimes we are experiencing extreme water scarcity, and now we have so much excess of the water that there's a crisis out of there. I do believe as a layperson that dams are a solution to capturing such kind of excess outbursts of the water, but a lot of people say that it is not the only solution. It's a partial solution, because when constructing a dam, number one, it's a very costly sort of a project, and then there's a lot of interprovincial squabbling involved in that, and that sort of affects our national cohesion when it comes to that. So what are the solutions, being a professor, being someone who's actually into this field, what do you suggest? What does the sciences suggest?
A little bit on, you will say what a forester has to do with the dams.
Right.
I've been dealing with the international treaty on wetlands, which is called the Ramsar Convention.
Lovely.
And in 2010, when there were floods, our honorable minister, she was from Lahore. She was attending this, I think, 50 years ceremony in Iran, Tehran, in the city of Ramsar. We had to go to celebrate the 50 years anniversary. And suddenly her husband died, and she nominated me to go there, and meeting with ministers and heads of the state. While in the tea break walking, the Secretary General of the convention, of the Ramsar Convention, I talked, he was very sorry about our floods. 2010 floods was a devastation, big devastation.
Right.
And he said, look here, what you need is a Ramsar advisory mission. And I knew about it, and he said, what you need is to manage the floods and reap the benefits. And it's a long story. We did manage to bring the mission to Pakistan, and on their recommendation, after years of struggle, we were successful in taking a delegation of 10 people to China to learn from their experiences.
Lovely.
And we traveled along the Yangtze River. There were 2 MNAs, a military corps of engineers, a provincial irrigation officers, a diversified group. And what we learned there was what is our own, desi knowledge, is to respect the rivers. And one of the participants, Dr. Kakar from Balochistan, he has the quality of converting complex things to simple language. And he summarized the entire mission in 3 words: flood welcome policy.
Flood welcome policy. Okay.
Wise use of floods. Store the flood water not in dams but underground and in wetlands.
Lovely.
And when coming back, we gave the report, and in the Senate and National Assembly standing committees, even in the then PM House, there was a strong resistance, especially from the engineers, because this is a cheaper solution.
Exactly.
Okay, so can you elaborate more on this solution?
We are Indus Valley civilization, and all our cities and towns are along the river. There is no civilization away from that. The civilization where there is a lot of per capita energy consumption. Leslie White's theory is that an advanced civilization consumes more energy per unit of area and per capita. And in a less developed society, you just see the energy consumption. So just when the floods come, respect the floods, open up the vast areas. It will bring a lot of nutrients. Have as many wetlands as possible. Give time to the flood to settle in the wetlands, and the groundwater is recharged. Pakistan's groundwater depletion is very alarming. In areas where it was 100 feet water was available, drinking water 20 years, not 200, 600 feet. Even in Islamabad, there are areas in the drought season, 600 feet, no water.
Because we had to do it all over again, at our place too as well. So, I learned about it then, because earlier it was at 110, now it's at 242 as well. We live in Islamabad as well. But yes, you're right. In some parts, you cannot even figure out whether there's water underground or not. But sir, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, sir, for being with us too as well. It was lovely to have you and to have this conversation as well. And what my research, and I've been talking about it, we have talked about it prior to this show as well. And where I said that, you know, dams cannot actually give us a complete 100% safe solution as well. We really need to look forward towards the water recharge underground and imagine. So, you know, that the dams we have will only give us water for 60 days all over Pakistan. You know, what do you think that we're going to do after 2 months' time? So we really need water for 10 more months, right? And that's what we really need to consume throughout the year. So that's the underground recharge, which actually enables us to use water throughout those 10 months as well. So comprehensively, it's not just the dams, you know, as Sir mentioned over here with his expertise, that we really need to have those wetlands. We really need to make sure that we make way for the flood too as well. And that's where the government really needs to play a role. But now, I think we really need to play a role too as well by donating onto 9999 or to the Prime Minister Flood Relief Fund as well. Make sure that all of those NGOs working on the ground, whatever, however you can contribute, if it's 10 rupees, if it's 15 rupees, if it's a tent, if it's clothing, if it's food item, anything, please make sure. And these are the help signs. 1135 is a helpline. You can call wherever you are in Pakistan if you really need any help. And 1125, you know, for people, you know, who are specifically in KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, you can call. These helplines have been set up by Army, Pakistan Navy, Pakistan Air Force. They have been contributing. They've always been on ground too as well. And for all of those people who are contributing, you know, I certainly want to pay rich tribute to you guys. Kharaj Tahseen pesh karna chahte hain, because you are the frontline warriors. You're making sure that each and every kid out there, each and every person out there is safer, he or she is getting better. They certainly have lesser problems in times of distress.
Okay, to sum up this, you know, entire conversation, you know, and a very good idea that sprung up from one of the, you know, guests sitting here is that, you know, we need to have wetland, you know, conservation, because, you know, there was this thing going on, especially in Balochistan, that our Karez system is drying out because there's no water left. And, you know, as Sir mentioned that, you know, our groundwater is becoming very low when it comes to that. Definitely, dams do give a solution because they capture a lot of water, but then at the same time it's a very costly sort of a solution, because, you know, and it impacts a lot of other political aspects of the you know, our community building when it comes to that. So definitely, you know, when I was saying that we are summarizing it, you know, we should look for the other solutions, and wetland, you know, discharging them for the water, I think it's a good solution, and we should work for that.
And in addition to that, people who live in urban areas, please make sure that you certainly are not in this very wrong or thoughtful process of yours that the floods are not going to touch us. God forbid if there's another month of monsoon rains, torrential rains, unfortunately the entire Pakistan, God forbid, can drown too as well. I think it's about preparedness for all of those people who are not in distress as of now and are helping other people. Please make sure that you help yourself by planning ahead as well. And that's something which is really very important. Till the next time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll make sure that every single day we kind of talk about it till the time that the people of Pakistan are going to have that life back, which they already had to as well. Till the next time, look after yourselves. Remember us all in your prayers. We need your prayers the most as well. Thank you very much. Good morning.